Imagine you save a baby from garbage, raise him with love, and he becomes president. But then he abandons you. This story gets even crazier when the truth comes out about who this president really was. Let's watch how this incredible story happened. But before that, please subscribe to Roots of the African Tales channel for more amazing stories like this. The sound came again, a soft cry that made Chloe's heart skip a beat. She stopped walking and listened. There it was, coming from the big green trash can behind the grocery store. But people don't cry in trash cans, do they? Chloe was only 19 years old. She worked at the store cleaning floors at night. It was past midnight, and the streets were empty. She was tired and wanted to go home to her small apartment. But that sound. She walked closer to the trash can. Her hands were shaking. What if it was a trick? What if someone was hiding? But then she heard it again. Definitely a baby crying. "Oh my God," she whispered. Chloe opened the trash can lid. Inside, wrapped in a dirty newspaper, was a tiny baby boy. He was so small, maybe just a few days old. His face was red from crying, and he was cold. "Who would do this?" Chloe said, picking up the baby carefully. "Who would throw away a perfect little baby?" The baby stopped crying when she held him. His tiny fingers grabbed her shirt. Chloe felt something she had never felt before, like this baby was meant to be hers. She looked around the empty street. No one was watching. No one cared about this baby except her. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "I'll take care of you, I promise." Chloe took the baby home. She didn't have much money, but she had love. She named him Joe because it meant beloved. She never told anyone how she found him. When people asked, she just said he was her son. 5 years later. "Mama, Mama, look what I drew." Joe ran into the kitchen holding a piece of paper. Chloe smiled. Joe was the smartest 5-year-old she knew. He could already read simple books. He asked questions about everything. "What is it, my love?" she asked. "It's you and me," Joe said proudly. "And look, I wrote family at the top." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. This boy had given her everything. She worked 2 jobs now, cleaning the store at night and washing dishes at a restaurant during the day. But it was worth it to see Joe smile. "It's beautiful," she said, hugging him tight. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy like other kids?" The question Chloe feared most. She knelt down to Joe's level. "Some families are different, baby. We have each other. That's all we need." Joe nodded, but Chloe could see he was thinking. He was always thinking. 10 years later. "Joe Martinez, please come to the principal's office." 15-year-old Joe felt his stomach drop. What had he done wrong? He was the best student in his class. He never got in trouble. Principal Johnson was sitting behind his desk with a woman Joe didn't know. She was wearing a fancy suit and had a briefcase. "Joe, this is Mrs. Patterson from the State Education Department," Principal Johnson said. "She has some exciting news." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Joe, you scored the highest on the state test in the entire country. We want to offer you a full scholarship to the best private school in the state." Joe couldn't believe it. "Really? But we can't afford." "It's completely free," Mrs. Patterson said. "Everything paid for. You're incredibly gifted, Joe. This could change your life." That night, Joe ran home to tell Chloe. "A scholarship?" Chloe said, sitting down hard on their old couch. "Joe, that's wonderful, but what, Mama?" Chloe looked around their tiny apartment. The walls had cracks. The furniture was old, but it was home. "That school is far away. You'd have to live there during the week." Joe sat next to her. "Mama, this is our chance. Your chance too. When I become successful, I'll take care of you forever. You won't have to work so hard anymore." Chloe looked at her son. When had he grown so tall? When had his voice gotten so deep? "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, we'll try it." 4 years later, Joe called home every Sunday, but the calls were getting shorter. "How's school, my love?" "Good, Mama. Really good. I'm student body president now." "That's wonderful. Are you eating enough? Are you—" "Mama, I have to go. I have a meeting with some important people. They think I could get into Harvard University." "Harvard? But Joe, that's so far." "I'll call you next week, okay? Love you." The phone went quiet. Chloe sat in the same old apartment. Nothing had changed except Joe wasn't there anymore. She still cleaned floors. She still washed dishes, but now she did it alone. 8 years later, Chloe saw Joe on TV for the first time in 2 years. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the youngest senator in our state's history, Senator Joe Martinez. Joe looked so handsome in his expensive suit. So confident, so different from the little boy who used to draw pictures of their family. The reporter asked him about his background. "I came from humble beginnings," Joe said smoothly. "My mother worked very hard to give me opportunities. She taught me that with determination, anyone can achieve the American dream." Chloe smiled, but something felt wrong. Joe talked about her like she was a story, not a person. The phone rang. "Mama, did you see me on TV?" "Yes, baby, I'm so proud of you. Listen, I'm getting married next month to Senator Williams's daughter, Rebecca. It's going to be a small ceremony. Just important people, you know? Political people." Chloe's heart sank. "Am I not important people?" "Of course you are, Mama, but this is about my career. You understand, right? Maybe we can have a private dinner later to celebrate." After Joe hung up, Chloe cried for the first time in years. 10 years later, and the next president of the United States, Joe Martinez. Chloe watched alone in her apartment as her son became the most powerful man in the country. He looked so proud on that stage. His wife Rebecca stood next to him, perfect and smiling. Their 2 children waved at the crowd. During Joe's speech, he talked about family values. He talked about the American dream. He talked about his humble beginnings, but he never mentioned Chloe by name. The next day, reporters came to Chloe's neighborhood. "Ma'am, are you President Martinez's mother?" Chloe looked at the cameras. She thought about telling them the truth. About finding Joe in that trash can, about raising him alone, about being forgotten. Instead, she said, "I don't have any comment." The reporters left. 2 years later, President Joe Martinez was the most popular president in 50 years. He was young, smart, and charming. Everyone loved him. But Chloe was sick. The doctor said her heart was failing. She had been working too hard for too many years. She didn't have insurance. She couldn't afford the treatment. She called Joe's office. "I'm sorry, Mom, but the president's schedule is completely full for the next 6 months," the secretary said. "This is his mother," Chloe said weakly. "Oh, well, let me take a message. I'll make sure he gets it." Joe never called back. 3 months later, Chloe was in the hospital. The nurses were kind, but she was alone. She had no visitors, no family, just the boy she raised, who was now too important to see her. Late one night, a young nurse named Jenny sat next to Chloe's bed. "Mrs. Martinez, is it true that your son is the president?" Chloe nodded weakly. "That must make you so proud," Jenny said. Chloe looked out the window at the city lights. "I found him in a trash can," she whispered. Jenny leaned closer. "What did you say?" "When he was a baby, someone threw him away like garbage. I found him and loved him. I gave him everything." Tears rolled down Chloe's cheeks. "And now he's thrown me away too." Jenny didn't know what to say. Jenny couldn't stop thinking about what Chloe had said. During her break, she called a reporter friend who worked at the newspaper. "I think I have a story you'll want to hear," she said. 1 week later, the headline was everywhere. "President's secret, abandoned baby to leader of the free world." The story told everything. How Chloe found baby Joe in the trash, how she raised him alone, how she worked 2 jobs to pay for his education, how he became successful and forgot about her. The country was shocked. Some people were amazed by the story of Joe's incredible journey. Others were angry that he had abandoned the woman who saved his life. Joe's approval ratings dropped for the first time. Joe held a press conference at the White House. "My fellow Americans," he said, looking serious, "the recent story about my childhood is partially true. Yes, I was found as an abandoned baby. Yes, a kind woman named Chloe took care of me." The reporters wrote down every word. But what the story doesn't tell you is that Chloe Martinez was not a good mother. She was poor. She couldn't take care of a child properly. When I became successful, I tried to help her, but she demanded too much money. She became jealous of my success. Chloe watched from her hospital bed. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Joe continued, "I am grateful for what she did when I was young, but I had to make the difficult decision to distance myself from her toxic behavior. Sometimes, even family can hold you back from serving the American people." The reporters nodded. It made sense to them. Poor people often became jealous of successful relatives. "I have no further comment about this personal matter," Joe said. "Thank you." The story changed everything for Chloe. Instead of sympathy, people called her greedy. They said she was trying to use her son for money. They said she was a bad mother who didn't deserve a successful son. Chloe stopped watching the news. She stopped reading newspapers. She just lay in her hospital bed, getting weaker every day. One night, she called Joe's office one last time. "Please," she whispered to the secretary, "just tell him his mama is dying. Tell him I love him. Tell him I'm sorry if I wasn't good enough." The secretary promised to pass along the message. Joe never called. 3 days later, Chloe died alone at 3:17 in the morning. Jenny, the kind nurse, was the only person with her. "What should I do about funeral arrangements?" Jenny asked the hospital administrator. "She has no money, and her son won't return our calls." "We'll have to use the county burial fund," the administrator said sadly. Poor woman. Imagine raising a president and dying with nothing. Only Jenny and 2 other nurses came to Chloe's funeral. It was held at a small cemetery outside the city. The coffin was simple wood. There were no flowers except the ones Jenny brought with her own money. The preacher didn't know Chloe, so he just read from the Bible. "We gather today to remember Chloe Martinez, a woman who gave her life caring for others." Jenny wiped tears from her eyes. She thought about Chloe's last words. "I just wanted him to love me back." President Joe Martinez's approval ratings had returned to normal. People forgot about the story. He was still popular, still successful, still powerful, but late at night, when Joe was alone in the Oval Office, he sometimes thought about Chloe. He remembered her gentle hands when he was sick, her proud smile when he brought home good grades, the way she called him "my love." He told himself he had made the right choice. A president couldn't be associated with poverty, with scandal, with the truth about being found in a trash can. But sometimes, in his dreams, he was 5 years old again, running into the kitchen with a drawing that said "family" at the top. 1 year later, Jenny was cleaning out old patient files when she found an envelope marked "For President Martinez" from Chloe. Inside was a letter and a small yellowed piece of paper. The letter read, "My dearest Joe, if you are reading this, I am gone. I want you to know that loving you was the greatest joy of my life. I never regretted finding you that night. You were my miracle. I kept this newspaper clipping all these years. It's from the day I found you. I thought you might want to know the truth about where you came from. I forgive you for everything. I hope someday you can forgive yourself. Love always, Mama." Jenny unfolded the newspaper clipping. It was old and brown from 38 years ago. The headline read, "Senator Williams' newborn son kidnapped from hospital." Below was a photo of a crying couple, Senator Williams and his wife. The same Senator Williams whose daughter Jo had married, the same family that had made Joe's political career possible. Jenny's hands shook as she read the article. Baby Jonathan Williams had been taken from the hospital nursery. The kidnappers were never found. The baby was never seen again, until a poor cleaning woman found him in a trash can and named him Joe. The President of the United States was not Joe Martinez, the son of a humble cleaning woman. He was Jonathan Williams, heir to one of the most powerful political families in America. The family he had married into was his own family. Rebecca Williams Martinez was his sister, and Chloe, the woman who saved his life and raised him with love, had died alone, never knowing that the baby she rescued was worth millions of dollars, never knowing that his real parents had spent their lives looking for him. Jenny stared at the letter and the newspaper clipping. What should she do with this information? Joe was now president. He had children with his own sister, though neither of them knew it. The truth would destroy everything. She thought about Chloe, who had died believing she wasn't good enough for her son. Jenny lit a match and held it to the papers. As they burned, she whispered, "Some secrets should stay buried." The ashes fell to the floor like snow, and somewhere in the White House, President Joe Martinez signed laws and made speeches, never knowing that the woman he abandoned was the only person who had ever truly loved him. Never knowing that he had thrown away the one person who knew where he really came from. Never knowing that his greatest success was built on his greatest lie. The boy from the trash can ruled the most powerful nation on earth, but he had lost his soul along the way. President Joe Martinez sat in his private study, watching his children play in the garden. 8-year-old Michael and 6-year-old Sarah were chasing butterflies, their laughter echoing through the open windows. His wife Rebecca smiled from the doorway, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Our third miracle," she whispered, joining him at the window. Joe wrapped his arms around her. "I still can't believe how perfect our life turned out. Sometimes I wonder what I did to deserve this family." Rebecca laughed softly. "You mean besides becoming president? I think marrying a Williams helped your luck." It was their usual joke. Rebecca's father, Senator Williams, had been Joe's political mentor. Their marriage had been called a political power move by the media, but Joe knew better. He had fallen in love with Rebecca the moment they met at a campaign fundraiser. The doorbell rang, interrupting their peaceful moment. "Are we expecting anyone?" Joe asked. Rebecca shook her head. "The security team would have told us." Joe's personal secretary appeared at the study door, looking unusually pale. "Mr. President, there's a woman here. She says she's from the hospital where Chloe Martinez passed away. She insists she has something that belongs to you." Joe's jaw tightened. He hadn't thought about Chloe in months. The guilt still ate at him sometimes, but he had convinced himself he'd made the right choice for his family's future. "What could she possibly have?" Rebecca asked, concerned. The secretary hesitated. "She won't say, sir, but she's carrying an old envelope. She seems upset." Joe sighed. "Fine, bring her to the Roosevelt room. Make sure security stays close." Minutes later, Jenny sat across from the president, her hands trembling as she held a yellowed envelope. "Chloe wanted you to have this," she said quietly. "She made me promise to give it to you after she died." Joe stared at the envelope marked in Chloe's familiar handwriting. "For my son Joe, the truth about who you really are." Rebecca moved closer to her husband, sensing his tension. Jenny's voice cracked as she spoke. "Mr. President, before you open that, you should know that Chloe found something when you were a baby, something that changes everything about who you think you are." Joe's hands froze on the envelope. "What kind of something?" Rebecca whispered. Jenny looked directly at Rebecca, then back at Joe, her face grave. "A hospital bracelet from the night you were found, with a name that will destroy everything you believe about your life." "Wait. Before you scroll away, this story is about to get insane. That hospital bracelet Jenny mentioned? It's going to shatter everything Joe believes about his life. I'm talking family secrets so dark, they'll make you question everything about love, identity, and what makes a family real. Drop a comment. What do you think is written on that hospital bracelet? The most shocking guess gets a shout out in part 2. Smash that. Like if this story gave you chills, and subscribe because part 2 drops tomorrow with a plot twist so crazy, you'll need to read it twice to believe it. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens when Joe opens that envelope. Hey besties, before we dive into part 2, smash that subscribe button because this story is about to get wild. You thought the trash can reveal was crazy. Wait till you hear what Jenny found in that envelope. It's going to blow your minds. Jenny's hands trembled as she held the hospital bracelet up to the light. Baby Williams, born March 15th, St. Mary's Hospital, she read again, her voice barely a whisper. President Joe Martinez stared at the faded plastic band, and suddenly he was 5 years old again, asking his mama why he didn't look like her, asking why he didn't have a daddy, asking questions that made Chloe's eyes fill with tears she thought he couldn't see. Rebecca grabbed the bracelet from Jenny's hands. This can't be real. My baby brother Jonathan was kidnapped when I was 3 years old. I barely remember him, but I remember my parents crying every night for months. Joe's legs gave out. He collapsed into his presidential chair, the same chair where he'd signed laws and made decisions that affected millions of people. Now he couldn't even decide how to breathe. "We're brother and sister," Rebecca whispered, her hand moving instinctively to her growing belly. "Our children. Oh God, what have we done to our children?" Jenny cleared her throat softly. "There's more." Chloe left detailed diaries about her life, about the choices she made, about the men who wanted to marry her. She pulled out a worn leather journal from her bag. She wrote in this every night for 38 years. Every single night she wrote about you, Joe. About how much she loved you. About what she gave up for you. Joe's voice cracked. What did she give up? Jenny opened the journal to a page marked with a faded ribbon. "May I read you something she wrote on your 18th birthday?" Joe nodded, unable to speak. Jenny began reading in Chloe's own words. "My dearest Joe turns 18 today. He's going off to college on that scholarship, and I'm so proud I could burst. But tonight, I'm thinking about David Thompson. He came to see me again last week, 15 years later, and he still wants to marry me. David owns 3 restaurants now. He drives a Mercedes. He has a beautiful house with a swimming pool. He told me he's never married because he's never stopped loving me. I could give you everything, Chloe," he said. "A big house, financial security, respect in the community. All you have to do is say yes." I looked at him through my screen door, this door that's been broken for 2 years because I can't afford to fix it, and I almost said yes. For just a moment, I imagined what it would be like to not worry about money, to not work 2 jobs, to have someone take care of me for once. But then Joe called from his room, "Mama, can you help me with my essay about my hero? I'm writing about you." And I knew I could never marry a man who couldn't see that Joe was the greatest blessing of my life. David shook his head when I told him no. "That boy has ruined your life, Chloe. You're 42 years old, you work like a slave, and for what? He's not even your real son." I closed the door in his face. Joe is my real son, not because I gave birth to him, but because I chose him. Every day for 18 years, I chose him. I chose his smile over financial security. I chose his dreams over my comfort. I chose his future over my present. Tomorrow he leaves for college, and I'll be alone for the first time in 18 years. But I'm not sad. I'm grateful. God gave me a miracle in that trash can, and I got to raise him. Some women get love handed to them on a silver platter. I had to dig mine out of the garbage, but it was worth every second. Jenny closed the journal. The room was completely silent except for Rebecca's quiet sobbing. Joe's face was wet with tears he didn't remember shedding. She gave up everything. For me. That's not even the beginning, Jenny said softly. "Would you like to hear about the other men?" Jenny turned to another marked page. "This entry is from when you were 12. Robert Chen came to the restaurant again today. This is the 4th time this month he's asked me to dinner. He's a good man, a successful businessman who treats me with respect. Today he brought flowers and a proposal that took my breath away. "Chloe," he said, "I've bought a house in the suburbs. 4 bedrooms, good schools nearby. I want you to marry me. I want to take care of you and give you the life you deserve." I was so tempted. Joe needs better schools. He needs a father figure. He needs opportunities I can't give him on my waitress salary. But then Robert said the words that broke my heart. Of course, we'd have to do something about the boy. I've looked into military schools. There's a good one in Virginia that takes boys at 13. It would make a man out of him. Military school. Send my baby away so I could have a comfortable life. I threw Robert's business card in the trash. Joe will never go to military school. He'll never be sent away. We'll make it work together just like we always have. Joe was gripping the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. She could have had everything. A house, security, a good life. But she chose me. Rebecca looked up through her tears. "Joe, don't you see what this means? Don't you understand what we've done?" "What we've done?" Joe's voice was hollow. Jenny turned to another section of the diary. "I saw Senator Williams on television today talking about child safety legislation. It's been 25 years since his son was taken, and he still gets tears in his eyes when he mentions kidnapped children. I wanted to call him. I wanted to tell him his boy is safe. His boy is smart and kind and loving. His boy just won National Honor Society and got accepted to Harvard. But I can't. Because what if he takes Joe away from me? What if he decides that a poor cleaning woman isn't good enough to raise a senator's son? Besides, Joe is my son now. I earned him through sleepless nights and worried days and love that never ran out. Senator Williams lost a baby. I found a miracle. We're even." The room fell silent again. Joe stared out the window at the White House lawn where his children played every afternoon. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew who I was, and she never told me." "She was protecting you," Jenny said, "but also protecting herself." Rebecca stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to any more. I can't hear about how wonderful and sacrificing she was when we... She ran to the bathroom. They could hear her being violently sick. Jenny looked at Joe with sad, knowing eyes. "She's thinking about the baby, isn't she?" Joe nodded. "The doctors say there's a high risk of birth defects because of what we are." "Joe, there's something else Chloe wrote about, something that might help you understand why this happened." Jenny opened the diary to its very first entry, dated 38 years ago. March 18th, 1985. "When I opened that dumpster lid and saw him wrapped in newspaper, my heart broke into a million pieces. He was so small. Maybe 3 or 4 days old. Someone had thrown him away like garbage. But when I picked him up, he stopped crying. He looked right at me with these big dark eyes, and I swear he smiled. I chose him, and he chose me right back. Some families are made by blood. Ours was made by love." Jenny closed the diary and looked at Joe. That was her first entry. This is her last one, written the night before she died. She turned to the final page, where Chloe's handwriting had grown shaky and weak. March 15th, 2023, Joe's 38th birthday. "I probably won't see another one of his birthdays. The doctors don't think I have much time left. Joe doesn't know I'm dying. He doesn't know I've been calling his office for months, just hoping to hear his voice one more time. I'm not angry anymore. I understand why he can't see me. Presidents don't have cleaning lady mothers. Presidents don't come from trash cans. But I want him to know that I forgive him. I also want him to know that I kept his secret safe. The hospital bracelet, the newspaper clipping, the truth about who he really is. I kept it all safe because I thought it might hurt him someday. But now I wonder if I made the right choice. Happy birthday, my love. Your mama forever, Chloe." Jenny finished reading and looked up to find Joe sobbing openly. "She died on my birthday," he whispered. "She died alone on my birthday, while I was at a state dinner celebrating with people who don't even care about me." Rebecca came back from the bathroom, her face pale and drawn. "Joe, we need to talk about what we're going to do." "About what?" "About everything. About us. About the children. About this pregnancy." She looked down at her still flat stomach. about whether we can live with what we've done. Joe stood up and walked to the window. Outside, protesters were already gathering. Someone had leaked the story. The signs read, "Incest President" and "Fake Family" and "Justice for Chloe." "It's too late," Joe said quietly. "The whole world knows." Rebecca joined him at the window. "Our children are going to see those signs. They're going to hear what people are saying about us." "What are they saying?" Rebecca's voice was bitter. "That we're sick, that we're perverts, that our children are genetic freaks, that we destroyed an innocent woman who saved your life." Joe's phone buzzed with a text message from his chief of staff. Congressional leaders calling for immediate resignation, approval rating at 2%. Cabinet discussing 25th Amendment. "I'm going to lose everything," Joe said. "You already lost everything," Rebecca replied. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before Joe could answer, 8-year-old Michael burst through the door. "Daddy, Mommy, there are people outside calling us bad names." 6-year-old Sarah was right behind him, tears streaming down her face. "They said we're freaks. They said we're not normal." Rebecca knelt down and pulled both children into her arms. "Listen to me, babies. Some people are confused right now. They don't understand our family." "Are you and Daddy really brother and sister?" Michael asked. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Joe knelt down beside his family, his wife, his sister, his children, his niece and nephew. "Yes," he said quietly. "We are. But we didn't know. And it doesn't change how much we love you." Sarah looked up with innocent eyes. "Does that make us bad?" "No, sweetheart. You are the most beautiful, wonderful children in the world. None of this is your fault." "Then why are people so angry?" "Daddy," Sarah asked, "are you going to stop being president?" Joe looked out the window at the growing crowd of protesters, at the news vans, at the world that was demanding his head on a platter. Then he looked at his children's faces and he made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, Joe stood behind the presidential podium for what everyone knew would be the last time. The East Room was packed with reporters, all of them expecting to watch the downfall of the most powerful man in country. Joe looked directly into the cameras and began, "My fellow countrymen, I stand before you today not as your president, but as a man who has discovered truths about himself that have shaken him to his core." The room was silent. 38 years ago, a 19-year-old girl named Chloe Martinez was walking home from work when she heard a baby crying in a trash can. That baby was me. I was 3 days old, abandoned, left to die. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Chloe could have walked away. She could have called the police. She could have left me there for someone else to find. Instead, she picked me up, took me home, and spent the next 38 years loving me unconditionally. Joe's voice began to crack. "What I learned this week is that I am not Joe Martinez, son of a cleaning lady. I am Jonathan Williams, the kidnapped baby who disappeared from St. Mary's Hospital in 1985. The baby that Senator and Mrs. Williams spent decades searching for." Gasps echoed through the room. "This also means that my wife Rebecca is not just my wife. She is my biological sister. Our children are not just the products of love. They are the products of an unknowing, incestuous relationship." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Joe raised his hand for silence. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is the most disgusting scandal in political history. You're thinking I'm a monster who destroyed an innocent family. But I want to tell you about the real monster in this story. The real monster is me." Joe pulled out Chloe's diary. "This is the diary of the woman who saved my life. The woman who worked 2 jobs for 15 years so I could go to good schools. The woman who turned down 7 marriage proposals because those men wouldn't accept me as their son." He opened a marked page. "When I was 25 and running for state senate, Chloe wrote, 'My Joe is going to be somebody important someday. I can feel it. But I worry that when he gets there, he'll forget where he came from. He'll forget the woman who cleaned floors so he could wear clean clothes to school.'" Joe's voice broke completely. She was right. I did forget. When I became successful, I was ashamed of my poor mother. When I became powerful, I was embarrassed by my humble beginnings. When I became president, I abandoned the woman who made it all possible." The room had gone completely silent. Chloe Martinez died alone in a hospital room 6 months ago. She died while I was signing legislation and giving speeches and pretending to be a leader. She died calling my office, begging just to hear my voice one more time. Joe wiped tears from his eyes. The last thing she said to her nurse was, "Tell him I love him. Tell him I forgive him. Tell him he was always good enough." I want you to know that the greatest tragedy in this story is not that I unknowingly married my sister. The greatest tragedy is not that our children will suffer for our innocent mistake. Joe looked directly into the camera. The greatest tragedy is that a woman who embodied the very best of country, who turned poverty into purpose, who transformed abandonment into love, who made the ultimate sacrifice for someone else's child, died believing she wasn't good enough for the son she saved. Joe closed the diary and looked back at the reporters. "I am resigning the presidency, effective immediately. Not because I committed incest. That was an innocent mistake. I'm resigning because I committed a far worse sin. I broke the heart of the woman who loved me most." Joe stepped away from the podium, then turned back. "And to those of you who want to judge my wife and children for the circumstances of their birth, I want you to remember something. Chloe Martinez didn't care that I came from a trash can. She loved me anyway. Maybe country could learn something from a cleaning lady's heart." Joe walked off the presidential stage for the last time, but his words would echo through country and history forever. And somewhere, in whatever place good mothers go when they die, Chloe Martinez was finally hearing her son say the words she had waited 38 years to hear. "I love you, Mama, and I'm sorry I took so long to come home." After Joe's shocking confession on national television, Rebecca couldn't handle the truth. That same night, she packed her bags with tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore, Joe," she whispered, holding their children close. "Every time I look at you, I see my brother. Every time I look at our kids, I think about what we've done to them." 8-year-old Michael clung to his father's leg. "Daddy, why is Mommy crying? Why can't we stay?" Joe knelt down, his heart shattering. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, buddy. Big mistakes that hurt the people we love most." Rebecca's voice was cold now. "I'm taking the children to my parents' house. We need time to figure out what comes next." "Rebecca, please. We didn't know. That doesn't matter anymore, Joe. The damage is done." She picked up Sarah, who was crying for her daddy. "Don't follow us. Don't call. We need space." And just like that, Joe's family was gone. The man who once ruled the most powerful nation on earth was suddenly alone in an empty house. No presidency, no family, no identity. For months, Joe tried to rebuild his life, but everywhere he went, people recognized him. "There's the incest president," they whispered, "the fake son who abandoned his real mother." No one would hire him, no one would rent to him. His political connections vanished overnight. The Williams family disowned him completely, refusing to acknowledge he was their long-lost son. Joe's savings ran out quickly, legal bills from the investigation, medical bills from Rebecca's pregnancy complications. The house was foreclosed, his cars were repossessed. 6 months after his resignation, Joe Martinez, the former president of the United States, was spotted on the streets of downtown Chicago, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Homeless, please help, God bless." His expensive suits were gone, replaced by dirty clothes from a shelter. His perfectly styled hair was now long and unkempt. His hands, which once signed laws, now shook as they held out a cup for spare change. People walked past him every day without recognizing the man who used to live in the White House. One cold evening, an old woman approached Joe's corner. She had kind eyes and gentle hands, just like Chloe used to have. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said, dropping a $5 bill in his cup. "Everyone deserves a second chance." Joe looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Mom. God bless you." As she walked away, Joe whispered to himself, "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry." The boy who was found in a trash can had come full circle. He was back on the streets, just as helpless as the night Chloe found him. But this time, there was no loving mother to save him. Only the cold, unforgiving streets and the weight of his regrets. Besties, this story just broke my heart. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Joe deserved this ending, or was his punishment too harsh? And what would you have done if you found a baby in a trash can like Chloe did? Also, smash that like button if this story made you emotional. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let me know in the comments, should there be a part 3 where Joe finds redemption?